is a show that I'm sad to see go, but I'm excited to see where the next season will take it. And it was another great announcement from this week, and that is American Horror Story Hotel. Now, American Horror Story Hotel. Some crazy-ish has definitely been happening. And I think I missed talking about a couple of episodes. However, I'm going to try to bring everyone up to speed because the season finale of Hotel was this past Wednesday. I was able to catch up on it. But I think in this show, in TV Talk, I failed to mention the last couple of episodes. So hopefully I could try to catch everyone up. For those of you who have not seen American Horror Story Hotel, I suggest right after we're done with this, you go find it on FX or find it on Spike or find it on whatever channel it's actually really on and I'm not lying to you about. FX. Go find it on FX. There's an FX Now app if you have Time Warner Cable, if you have Optimum Online, if you have Comcast. I'm sorry if you have Comcast. If you have any of the major TV providers, even satellite, DirecTV, and all that kind of stuff, go watch American Horror Story Hotel. Definitely watch it because we're going to finish it right now. And then you could go back to YouTube and you could watch my stuff. You'll see the social media. It was popping up like right here. My social media, just look for me. Just look for me on YouTube. Or type in !YouTube and it'll give you the link to my VODs. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Or type in !podcast in the chat and it'll take you to my iTunes and you can listen to these full episodes, these 2-hour episodes, for free. I don't charge anything because I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this because I love talking television. I love it. Absolutely love it. And I love you people. Especially you, Eric the Great. I love you. Now that you followed me, man. Now that I have it and we have video and all that stuff, I love you, Eric. I love you. Don't let Chris say anything different. I love you, Eric. Let's get back to some American Horror Story Hotel. American Horror Story Hotel started off a little weird for me. However, as it kept going, it got better and better and better. Then we had the Halloween episode, and I nearly cried because, as you may know, I'm a sucker for serial killers. I love their stories. I love how they got to it. In fact, we're going to be talking about a show that I first thought was about serial killers, but it wasn't. But we'll get to that after we talk about American Horror Story. So as we leave it, in American Horror Story, the last we left off in TV Talk, John, our protagonist for this season, had just discovered the Ten Commandments killer sidekick, who happens to be a girl, a little girl, not just a girl, but like a little girl, like American Doll size. Happens to be this little girl, yet when he tries to pursue her and tries to figure out more of this Ten Commandments killer, he finds out that, she dies. She escapes and dies in a road accident. So John finds out that the Ten Commandments killer is based out of the Hotel Cortez. Now, this is not a very good thing because he stayed there. And John knows that the root of all evil is coming from this Hotel Cortez. So he goes back to the Hotel Cortez. And, well, Sally, good old Sally, who I think is his wife, right? Oh, yeah, Eric. Oh, the Kylo Ren undercover thing. I think I tweeted it out. I think I tweeted it. You might have to check my tweets, but I think I tweeted it. Anyway, I'm trying to remember all the episodes of American Horror Story. But anyway, so John finally figures out who the Ten Commandments killer is. And guess what? I'm going to hit the spoiler. It's him. John is the Ten Commandments killer. How crazy is that? Then we find out that a couple years earlier, he had gone to the Hotel Cortez. Like 5 years earlier. And he came into contact with Mr. March, the original owner of the Hotel Cortez, who happens to love his serial killers. Yes, he does. He loves them very much. And he figures that John is just perfect for March's new kind of apprentice, the Ten Commandments killer. Now, we found out on Devil's Night, on the Halloween episode of American Horror Story, that Mr. March, I gotta get his name. I gotta figure out who his name is. Mr. James Patrick March. Mr. James Patrick March is a fan of serial killers. In fact, he's probably the reason behind a lot of these serial killers, which is just so interesting. So we find out that John happened to meet James Patrick March years earlier, and James Patrick March wanted John to be the Ten Commandments killer. He knew that John will be the new serial killer that James takes under his wing. So he convinces Elizabeth the Countess, played by Lady Gaga, who won a Golden Globe for it. Congratulations to Lady Gaga. You are close. You just got to win an Emmy for it. That's all you have to do is win that Emmy, and you are on the road for an EGOT. And I want to see you get that EGOT because you, Miss Gaga, have a lot of talent. Truly a lot of talent. But anyway, John, out of his distraught for Holden getting kidnapped, he kidnaps someone of his own. Not someone of his own, but someone whom he feels has wronged, and kills him. And thus begins the tracking of the Ten Commandments killer. So now we start to get into the next couple of episodes. Now, these kids that Alex had turned by accident by curing the one kid of his disease, and then he takes, he kills the whole class. That whole class that whole school situation, because it wasn't a shooting, but that whole school situation that happened where the kids attacked the teachers and all that. Well, I mean, that's not going to go unnamed. Alex hunts down all the kids and finds all the parents and really tries to get the kids to come back to the Cortez, because Alex feels that if she has the kids in the Cortez, she could keep them contained. They could bring people in, just as the Countess has been doing, and take their blood then. Now, Elizabeth, the Countess, she's made quite a few enemies in her time. I mean, she's been around for a while, but the only person that really, really, really loves her is James Patrick March. However, she doesn't know that because she ignores him, and he's basically just played in the kind of in the shadows of the Cortez. He only allows those who he wants to see him, and then the rest are just... But Donovan and Ramona seek out revenge, and they try to take out the Countess. Well, the Countess is smarter, and she's able to seduce Donovan. Donovan betrays Ramona, and they hide Ramona, and they lock Ramona in the same hallway that Valentino and Natasha were locked in for all those years. And the Countess, who married Will, who's now going to be the new owner of the hotel, because that was her plan the whole time. She was going to marry Will, he was going to own the hotel, and then he'll die in some freak accident, he'll roam the halls, she'll have his money, and the Countess will be rich until she depletes that money and she gets rich again. Or she finds another rich schmuck that will marry her. Well, Ramona gets her hands on Will after the Countess betrays him, and Ramona kills Will and drinks his blood. So Ramona is kind of free within these hallways. The Countess then calls back Valentino and Natasha, and she invites them back to the hotel. She kills both of them, and it's just all so sad. John and Alex get back together. John now has pretty much accepted the fact that he is the Ten Commandments killer. Finally, and with this new rekindled love that Alex and John have together, they're able to convince the kids that are now unleashed in the world to come back to the hotel. I don't know, I don't really remember which ones convinced who and how they convinced it, but they brought the kids in, locked them in the hallway with Ramona, and that's just how that ends. Let's just move on. Let's just keep going. But anyway, Iris, played by Kathy Bates, and Liz Taylor, our man-woman who is not dead, nor is she a vampire, but she is probably the Countess's best and most loved possession. A man who wanted to dress like a woman, and the Countess got her hands on him and said, "Honey, you gotta shine." And thus Liz Taylor was born. So, towards the end of the 10th episode, Iris, Kathy Bates, and Liz Taylor decide that they want to team up and take over the hotel. Well, they can't do that with the Countess around, and thusly Donovan, who is Iris's son. So they go on a shooting spree, and they try to kill the Countess, and unfortunately, she escapes thanks to Sally, and Iris' son Donovan, who has fallen back in love with the Countess, gets killed in the crossfire. So now we're at the final 2 episodes of American Horror Story. I kind of went fast through those other episodes just so that we could get through them and pretty much get everything all situated. But now we're at the final 2 episodes. So Liz Taylor and Iris, they think that now the Countess is down and is out for the count. And we find out that Sally actually saved the Countess. And we then find out Sally's story. Now, Sally is played by Sarah Paulson, who is an American Horror Story regular, and she is just a tremendous part of this series. I really loved her in Freak Show. I thought she did an amazing job as two people on one body. It's a very tricky part to take off, and if I ever do get to meet her, I would love to just sit down with her and just figure out how were you able to get into two heads at once, and just sit down with her, and how does she prepare for some of these roles, especially in American Horror Story, because you find out that each character is not just a horrific type character. The stories and everything are just so engrossed. And so they're almost like a huge lie that is so thought up and so you'd almost think like the government is writing it for like a family going into protective custody. Like, this is your new identity. This is where you're going to be working. These are who you are right now. And every person that's ever been on American Horror Story Hotel, including Lady Gaga, who's new to it, and who is also a character in her own sense. I keep forgetting what her real name is, but Lady Gaga is a character. So this is a character playing another character, and she was able to just get into that chemistry that American Horror Story is. So in episode 11 of American Horror Story Hotel, we find out Sally's back end story of how she was basically the drug peddler for all these musicians, and she happened to be a songwriter herself, and she had killed two people in particular, and James Patrick March had her tortured, and I won't get into details about that, but had her tortured, and she eventually had killed Iris's son, Donovan, the first time around, and Stephanie Jones. Thanks, Eric, for the full name. I wasn't looking for the full, but thank you, Stephanie Joanne Angelina Germanota. I hope I said that right. I know Lady Gaga is watching, or under the table at the Critics' Choice Awards, because that's probably where she is right now. But anyway, we find out that Sally, we know Sally was killed by Iris, so she is tethered to the Cortez Hotel. And thank you, Eric. I'm always happy to get your help. Don't worry. I'm always happy. So now going back to the episode, back to this episode, or back to present time. The Countess uses her children to regain her strength. Meanwhile, Iris and Liz try to go find Ramona and gain a sort of new ally to defeat this enemy of the Countess. All of which the Countess, the Cortez Hotel gets a visit from a sort of person from a different season. Now, we were told at the beginning of this season, before Hotel came out, that from now on, American Horror Story, each season will have stronger ties to the older seasons. And this was going to be the first season that it did. And we were actually blessed with a witch from season 3, Coven. So, there you go. We had one of the witches come in. James March and Ramona were able to kill the witch. And now Ramona drinks the witch's blood, which is apparently like the Cavassier, or the highest of high champagnes, I would say, of blood. I mean, not much of a blood drinker, so I wouldn't really know my levels of blood, but I would assume that witch's blood, since they don't really die much, maybe, perhaps, something like that, is better than regular human's blood, or another vampire's blood. But anyway. So, Ramona is about to face off with the Countess, and John comes in and doesn't necessarily save the day. Ramona the Countess wants to leave, and as she's leaving, elevator's door open for her to leave from her suite, and there's John, the Ten Commandments killer. He's got one kill left before he can live in eternity with Alex and their son Holden, and that kill is a murderer. That's the last commandment that he has to do. Thou shalt not kill, or thou shalt not commit murder, if you want to get really biblical. And he shoots down the Countess, and he kills her. And he presents a trophy to James March. And March waits patiently, because now he has the love of his life forever, and that is the Countess. And we find out that March knew who, all those years ago, all those decades ago, that it was the Countess that had routed him out from the police. And the Countess goes, "No, that wasn't me. I would be proud to admit it, but it wasn't me." And then we find out that March's assistant, March's maid for all these years, and years before everybody had died, was the one who did it. Hazel, the maid, was the one who actually called the police so that she could be with March forever. Well, that doesn't really happen because March bans Hazel, and, that's that. Now we're on to the season finale of American Horror Story Hotel. The Hotel Cortez decides to go under new management. Iris and Liz are free to run the way that they want. However, the ghosts of the Hotel Cortez, mainly Sally and Will, don't really want that to happen. So they kill pretty much every guest that comes in from coming into the hotel. Now, Iris and Lizzie really, they don't want that. They want to run the hotel as it should be run, like a regular hotel. So they call a meeting of all the ghosts, and March tells Liz and Iris that none of the ghosts will kill anymore, because in 2026, it'll be 100 years that the Hotel Cortez was open. And after that happens, they will meet 6 out of 6 requirements that the U.S. government uses to make a building a historic landmark. And then they'll never shut down the Hotel Cortez. And then people could just kill and maim and do whatever they want. Well, they decide to bring in a kind of a ghost whisperer. This ghost whisperer is called, her name is Billie Dean Howard, played by Sarah Paulson, which again, you get to see the differences that Sarah Paulson can do in just one episode, where she's playing Sally, who wants to be a murderer and kill every guest. And then you see Billie Dean Howard, who plays a medium. I mean, mediums are cool and everything. I've seen Ghost Hunters, and yeah, you guys are doing the Lord's work. So, Sally, to help Sally and Will, mostly, with their murderous intentions, Iris gives Sally a cell phone and says, "This hotel now has free Wi-Fi. So you used to write music for people. You used to be a sort of muse of sorts for musicians and everything like that. Why not do the same with social media?" And she introduces Sally to social media. So now you have a dead woman who's posting pictures, videos, Vines, Snapchats, Facebook posts, streaming on Twitch or YouTube, doing all these things, and she's feeling a sense of purpose again that doesn't have to deal with killing people. And with Will, Liz approaches Will and says, "Will, you always wanted to be in the fashion industry. Well, here's the thing. You can't die, so you can keep being in the fashion industry. And Liz says, since he is not tainted with either vampire or the undead, he can be the face of this new company, while Will is the brains behind and the creative brains behind this fashion industry. So Liz becomes the face of Will's new endeavor, takes over the company, and thus the Hotel Cortez thrives. Now, as a treat, Iris decides to give Liz one last gift and invites this medium, this Billie Dean Howard, in to try to get Liz to talk to Tristan. And we know Tristan in the mid-season finale, or maybe a little bit before, was killed by the Countess because she was jealous of their love. Billie Dean Howard tries to communicate, and nothing. Then she reaches him, and he says he does not want to talk to Liz. Liz is heartbroken. Things go on, life goes on. Liz finds out that she has terminal cancer. Prostate cancer that went up to the spine. In fact, she made a joke saying, I think I'm the only woman in history who has prostate cancer. She's great. So Liz knows only one thing. She wants to die with the rest of the people in the hotel with her family. As all the ghosts that still hang around the Cortez are about to maim Liz, the Countess ghost arrives. This is the first time we've seen her since her dinner with James Patrick March. And she figured if Liz was her greatest creation and her greatest pet, she's the one to put her down. And Liz dies at the hands of the Countess, and there's Tristan. Tristan visits. And life goes on. Now Liz and Iris run the hotel. Will's company is ran by Liz still, who has people come in, but this medium just keeps coming back because this medium wants to meet the Ten Commandments killer. Now, she's been coming back every Devil's Night to try to communicate with John, and this is it. And the Hotel Cortez wants to thrive. However, with the medium keep coming back every Devil's Night, that's bad for business. So John has a theory once and for all. He brings Billie Dean to Devil's Night, and you get to see him again. Dahmer, Gacy, Monster, Richard Ramirez, the Zodiac Killer, and James Patrick March. They bring him back for the final episode. The final episode of the season. They have another Devil's Night. And they tell Billie Dean, stop looking for us or we'll kill you. And then John goes to sleep forever. And he lives with his wife and his kid. And their daughter goes off to a school. And it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful end to a horrific middle. I know I kind of just skipped some parts in that, but I gotta say, even though it's meant to be a gruesome, terrifying TV show, American Horror Story really does know how to get stories right. In fact, it has actually gotten me interested in watching American Crime Story. I missed the first season completely. However, I know the first season and the second season, it's the same way, just like Fargo too, where each season is a different story. So I don't have to watch the first season to see the second season. So I'm going to start that, especially since American Crime Story is about the OJ trial, OJ Simpson, which, hey, why not? I'll relive it. It seems fun. It seems fun because we're going to be talking about another story right after. Right, not right meow. In a sec. In a sec. Oh, it's going to be fun. It is going to be fun. Why is this not working? Okay, there we go. So American Horror Story Hotel. I didn't find, I mean, not, there was a lot of murder, there was a lot of death. Some of the characters you really got into. Other characters you almost nearly forgot. And I felt bad a little bit. Excuse me. The main focus, obviously, was Lady Gaga. At first, when she was first announced, I thought she was just going to be someone that you saw every once in a while. She and Angela Bassett kind of switched roles. Like, Angela Bassett, she was in a lot of each of the seasons that she was in once she came in. And I thought that's what Lady Gaga would be, and I thought maybe Angela Bassett would be in the main mix a little bit more. I know Angela was in the later part, more of the later part of the season, but I didn't think at first that a lot of it would be around Lady Gaga's character. Now, this is not me complaining about Lady Gaga and her character and everything. However, Lady Gaga did an absolute fantastic job. She really put her talents as a musician and a performer, and was able to translate that into being an actress. We all know that she can put on a show. However, that show is usually backed by the music that she's written or the music that she helped write and produce and whatnot. This was just straight acting. She had to show emotion. She had to show that she was going to be happy, that she was going to be sad, that she was going to be heartbroken, that she was, in love, that she wasn't really in love, that she had to show all these emotions at once. I feel at first you go through all these emotions when you see a casting like Lady Gaga coming to a TV show that you really like to watch. At first I was a little skeptic about it, like everybody else was. And first couple episodes, it was like, this is, you're sitting there, you're watching it, and with the music on in the background, you kind of got the feeling of, this is a Lady Gaga music video with American Horror Story, like, as a title card. But then, as things started really get going, and as you start to get in touch with the characters, and you start to feel the same feelings that they're feeling, I don't know. Did you feel betrayed the same as she did when she found out of Tristan and Liz's love? Did you feel the hate when she killed Tristan after finding out their love between Tristan and Liz? There's all these sort of emotions that go through everyone's mind when you're watching these shows. And this show really does that. And again, they're bringing stronger connections of the other seasons. However, they're not really letting a lot of these other seasons control the show, which is great because someone can sit down tonight and watch all of season 5 of American Horror Story Hotel. And yet, they might miss a couple references about a house that has haunted ghosts and the Devil's Night with all of those who have died and wronged coming back to life for one night only. I mean, that's always been consistent. However, I think that we have yet to see the full potential of American Horror Story. And I think we'll see it in this upcoming season, because they've already said that this upcoming season will take place in the present and will have even a stronger tie to the former seasons of this show. And I gotta say, Lady Gaga was a great addition. I hope we see her character come back. I hope we see her maybe come back as a special guest. Maybe she will kind of put it back on the back burner. Maybe we'll see some other bigger names like hers come in. It might be one of those shows where each season they get one actor or actress to come in and be the center focus of that show, yet allow the original actors and actresses of who have always been within American Horror Story. Because here you have a cast who've been working together for 5 seasons, 4 seasons before she came in, but 5 seasons altogether. And they were really able to embrace her. But at the same time, they're able to keep it together, and they're able to tell different stories throughout each season. And I think, and I said it earlier in this stream, and I'll say it again, but I think you have to be a different level kind of actor or actress to be doing something like that, where you have to come back and you have to convince people that the story that you're telling is completely different from the story that from a different story that you told. But you also have to keep the same level of commitment emotionally and psychologically in order to captivate the audience as you did in the previous seasons. And I don't know if this is making much sense, but that's what I'm getting at. And I can't wait to see what American Horror Story has in store for us in September. I can't wait to see what sort of articles are going to come out for it. And yeah, I'm really, really excited for more American Horror Story. So that will definitely be back in September when we get new TV shows. And I will miss it. And I will miss talking about it, but maybe I'll reference it. I'll always reference it because it's just that good of a show. And if you haven't seen it, I think the first couple seasons are still on Netflix, so you could go catch it.